Hello and welcome. This is another nerdy video testing video. This is, first of all, I need to give you a warning that this is going to be some really not pretty footage because we're basically trying to create the worst lighting conditions and see what we can pull back out of that in both the EVA1 and Vlog or the A7iii using a couple different picture profiles, see what might work. So the main thing is, what can you do if you have just a really bright background? So there's just a single LED panel hitting the roof or the ceiling inside this room, and it's quite a bit darker than outside. And so I just wanted to see what it looked like. The EVA1 is always going to have Vlog on, so just want to see how the dynamic range pulls together what we are seeing compared to the A7iii. So that was the first picture profile, which is the standard, knowing that it would just blow out basically everything outside that window. Also, this is very underexposed in the room, trying to get something to show up in the window. So the first thing you'll notice is that we've brought up stuff in the room, so it's super noisy because in post we've brought up these shadows a lot, and so both cameras do have quite a bit of noise, and it's not going to look great color wise either, but so I would say that this here now is the SLog 2 on the A7iii. Probably looks the worst as far as these shadows go. Super noisy and super red. I tried to fix color to some degree. Didn't spend a lot of time on fixing color on either camera, but just to see quickly what you can pull out of it and how much better you can make it from what it's given. So all these first three videos, now we're on the HLG3. This is probably the best out of the three as far as like being able to retain some of the outdoor sky. Hardly any of the sky you can see, and it's still, I would say, it doesn't compare to the Vlog that the EVA1 can do. Now these are, I would say it's the least amount of noise that the A7iii can do. But definitely I'd say the Vlog with the EVA1 is holding together better. And so this is all, now this is obviously a bit arbitrary as far as kind of how each one would handle its exposure with the exact same settings. They both have exact same lens, so the EVA1 has a Super 35 sensor, whereas A7iii is full frame, so they're both using a 28mm lens. So now here what we've changed is finally exposed for the scene in the room because it's actually darker outside. And you can see that Vlog still seems to hold together, capturing that sky a bit better as far as dynamic range goes. And I did HLG3 for the A7iii just because it seemed like that was the best out of the options we tried. And now, here we are again in daylight, this time exposing a little bit better for the scene indoors. And so it is still underexposing the subject, but not as much. But then just to see if there's anything you can pull out of the background. And again, the Panasonic is seeming to capture a bit of that background. It's obviously blowing out a lot of it, but you can see a bit of that house in the background. The HLG3 mode is not really capturing anything at the same exposure settings, basically. So that was just a little test for me to see what seems to hold out better. Now there's probably other settings that you can kind of, if you get really used to your Sony, you might be able to get something. I think it's more about knowing what you want to try and salvage. What's more important to salvage? Do you care about a cleaner image on your subject, or do you care about making sure you capture that background? And so yeah, and that's just an arbitrary amount of difference between the exposure indoors and outdoors. Obviously, things would be a lot better if you just blast the light indoors a lot more to get on your subject. But anyway, this is just some interesting tests for me.